Welcome back to the show. Did you know that Canada has one of the highest rates of euthanasia in the world, but so many of us still do not fully understand medical assistance in dying, or otherwise known as MAID. A new documentary called In My Own Time aims to change that. Take a look.
No one that has a cancer diagnosis deserves to suffer. We need to be treated with dignity and fairness.
You don't get to do that all the time.
I just want to do it.
We only live once. We also only die once. And so to have the privilege to help these people die the way they want is pretty amazing.
To continue this important conversation, we have Dr. Konia Trouton, a physician, MAID assessor, and provider, as well as advocate Kim King. Dr. Konia and Kim, welcome to The Social. Thank you for being here.
This is a really important conversation. Dr. Konia, I'll begin with you because you are one of about 3,000 clinicians across Canada that provide MAID as in your profession. And in this country, who is currently eligible for the process?
Yeah, really important to understand that. So first of all, you need to be over the age of 18. You need to be eligible for Canadian health insurance, so you can't travel to come and get this. And then you have to have one of three important criteria. First, you have to have an incurable illness, disease, or disability, incurable. Then you have to be in an advanced state of irreversible decline in capability. You can't be able to look after yourself. Lastly, you have to have intolerable suffering. So you have to be able to have suffering so much that despite medication, despite physiotherapy, despite palliative care, you are still suffering. And lastly, you have to be capable to make the decision. So you have to have the capacity. So no one's forcing you to make it on your own decision, but you have to have that capacity.
Mm-hmm. So Dr. Konia, what are some of the most common reasons that Canadians are seeking out MAID today? Yeah,
there's a really good document done by Health Canada. They put out annual statistics on assisted dying, and we know that the most common reason is cancer. So 63% of people who have an assisted death have cancer. The average age is 77. And it's equal between men and women. It's about 50-50.
Interesting. Well, Kim, one of your closest friends, Audrey, used MAID in 2018 after being diagnosed with terminal cancer. Can you tell us a little bit about Audrey's decision?
Yes. So Audrey received her diagnosis in 2016, and at that point she had stage 4 breast cancer that had metastasized to her bones. And she took her diagnosis very well, and these are her words that she shared many times. I cried for about 5 minutes, and then I said to myself, I have two choices. First thing I can do is wallow in this, or I can decide to live the best rest of my life. And that's exactly what Audrey, and she leaned into her death. She dealt with it like a project, and you know, it was really incredible to be a part of that. I was with Audrey when she first learned about MAID from her oncologist, and the thing that I was really struck with is just how comforting and reassuring it was to Audrey to know that she could access MAID and that she could have some control back over her end of life.
Dr. Konia, I feel like people might assume that doing the type of work that you do would be morose or depressing, but you don't see it that way at all. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, not at all. I mean, first of all is the assessment phase. You know, like Kim described with Audrey, it's a journey that we do with patients, you know, to let them know what it's all about and if it fits within their care goals. Right? The second part is actually when we do the assistance, and if people decide that they want to go ahead with it after having 2 assessments by 2 different physicians and spending some time over it, the elegance that I experience with being in a room with people where their family's present, their loved ones are present, perhaps a priest is present, and I'm just helping to choreograph what they want as a beautiful end-of-life experience. So being in that very intimate moment, helping them transition to the next stage of their life is so important, so valuable, and so intimate. I am part of the process, but it's led by the person. It's always led by the person. So that's a flip, right? Normally as doctors we're in charge, but in this case we're not.
Yeah.
So Kim, you were actually in the room when Audrey passed.
Yeah.
Can you share your experience?
Yes, Audrey had a beautiful day. It started with her breakfast of lobster eggs Benny, cooked by a very special friend. She had her mom, her niece, and 3 other really wonderful girlfriends at her bedside. There there was candle, there was music playing with a musician that she loved very much, strumming songs softly to her. And there was, of course, a lot of advice. Audrey was going to get her last words to all of us. She had lots of sage advice for us. And it was an incredible experience, exactly by her design. But I want to say the biggest and most poignant part of the whole experience was the last moment when she looked at us and she said, I never wanted you all to really know how much I was suffering. And she said, you know, I've lived my life, I feel grateful, and I'm ready to go, and it's okay. And it was a beautiful death, and it was exactly, to Konia's point, exactly as she wished for.
Wow.
Yeah.
Dr. Konia, Canada has one of the most progressive MAID systems in the world, and there have been plans for it to be expanded, to expand the eligibility criteria. But there are people who are concerned with things being taken sort of too far. How do you grapple with that concern, or what do you say to those concerns?
Yeah. Well, first of all, there's a lot of negative media out there on this, and so I'm so glad we're here today. But first of all, I'd like people to go to legitimate websites and get the right information. So one of that is the Health Canada report on assisted dying. The other is the Dying with Dignity website, and the other is the Canadian Association of MAID Assessors and Providers. So there's some really good guidance documents on what's possible. The second is that the eligibility criteria and the thorough documentation that we need to do a proper assessment, it's a process, right? It doesn't happen just at that moment. If you ask me for an assisted death right now, I can't do it. You have to put it in writing. You have to have a full assessment by one clinician and another one by either a nurse practitioner or a physician. It takes time, it takes planning. And the documentation has to be very secure, that we've made sure that there's no coercion, right? That your thinking process is clear. And if there's any hesitation, I would lose my license if I get it wrong. I might be sent for criminal prosecution if I'm wrong. So it's really robust.
Yeah, it is. You know, we're talking a lot about the person who is seeking out assisted dying, but we're not really talking about the family or the friends and the loved ones who are left behind. So again, I go to you, Kim. How has Audrey's decision impacted you?
Yes. I mean, when she originally set the date, it was hard, for sure. It was hard, but November 1st, 2018, she was very clear on that, and she never wavered for a moment. But Audrey was also bringing us along on her journey with incredible conversations, and I would almost say coaching, about the fact that she wanted a good death, and we knew that. So there was no concerns, because we had now seen firsthand how much she was reassured and was at peace with her death. So it was, it was something that we just leaned into right along with her.
Dr. Konia, you say it's important to start these conversations with ourselves, with our loved ones, and our healthcare practitioners. I imagine, like, the earlier the better. So what else do we need to know?
Yeah. Well, I think the process of advanced care planning, like what happens if you have a stroke? What happens if you have a heart attack? What happens if you have a catastrophic illness, right? Your family should know what you want, and your healthcare provider should know what you want. When I come and meet someone, then I look at their medical records, because I'm not usually their healthcare provider. Right. So I need to be able to look at their medical notes and say, oh, actually, they've brought this up for many, many years. They brought it up to their healthcare provider. It's well documented. And the converse is also true, right? If this is not something that you want to do, you don't want to have assistance to die, you would like to die naturally, that's great. But having that documented as well is so important. So then I can look at the medical records and the family discussions, and there's a complementarity between those. So having it with your healthcare provider and your family is so, so important.
And having this discussion and bringing it to households across the country is so important. So I thank you both for sharing your perspective and your expertise.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you. We want to tell you that you can stream the film In My Own Time. It is free right now to do so on the Dying with Dignity Canada website. It is listed right now on the screen. Write it down. Give it a watch. We'll be back right after this.
Hey, you, come a bit closer. We've got so many more must-see interviews, spicy debates, lifestyle tips, and pop culture moments. So subscribe to our channel by tapping the logo below and don't miss out.